where we discuss and seek change in long-term athletic development. My name is Ben Wellenbach, and I am the dad of two girls, strength coach and owner of Be Well Fitness since 2007. And prior to opening the doors in '07, I was an athlete virtually all my life. Sports were life to me. Sports are still a large part of my life and identity. I now see them and experience them from a whole new vantage point and from a whole new lens. So, as a father of two girls and coach to many, I'm both concerned and hopeful of where I see things are headed. It is my desire to help educate and shift the way our current culture operates regarding long term athletic development. The name Academy reminded me of school where we learn and grow, hence the subtitle Building Better Athletes. I wanted this to feel something like a cool school that people wanted to attend. I wanted this to be a resource for coaches, players, parents, organizations, and communities to benefit from. So I want to change the way we see human development for the long-term success of everyone. And I really feel as if that starts from the ground up. And I thought it would be fun to combine my love of sneakers, especially Nike, really exclusively Nike, with each guest that's interviewed. So I will pair, no pun intended, each guest with a sneaker from the Nike collection that best represents them. Today, we are fortunate to have two great guests joining us. And I think everyone knows who LeBron James is. I also think we all know the impact that he's had on many players of all generations. Not only was he looked up to by our guest, he also had some similarities, which led to the shoe choice of this man, Drew Peterson. Nike shoe LeBron 9 South Beach colorway. This was the first place LeBron won a championship and the very first place Drew started his career and went on to win his first championship later that very season with a different team. But how do you find a pair of shoes that represents this guest's impact on soccer as well as his current life? These shoes were in high demand for the collaboration because people knew they could not be around forever. You, of course, would go with the Kill Shot J. Crew in Team Red colorway to represent our second guest, Ryan Wittenbrink. Not only does the Team Red represent his school ties to IU, but it is also the color of his hair. So I'm very fortunate to have met both of these young men when they were in high school, and I'm honored to call them friends and continue to be entrusted with their coaching. So, boys, welcome to the podcast.
Honored to be
Thanks
here.
for having us.
So I figure it's best to kind of start with after that intro. Start with like your history of sports. So Drew, tell me about your sports experiences as a youth. Like, I know you're playing basketball now, but was it always just basketball? Was there other sports? When did you start? All of that.
Yeah, it was obviously been a long journey. Played every different sport growing up. Soccer, of course. Baseball, football, and then basketball. I actually think me and Witt's early days of meeting each other was on the baseball field, and played baseball up until maybe 6th or 7th grade, and then had to focus on basketball as basketball started to become more of a year-round sport for me, and then quit football after 8th grade. So going into high school, I was fully focused on basketball, but I'd say I learned a lot from. I think playing all sports growing up helped you kind of obviously learn a bunch of different ways to move your body and things like that. So I think there's an advantage definitely to playing all different kinds of sports and all the things that come with each individual one. But then obviously played high school year round for basketball. That's when things started to get a little more serious, and ended up taking it really seriously my sophomore year. Changed AAU teams, which is a team to get more eyes on me from college coaches and stuff like that, and ended up getting my first college offer, I think my sophomore year, to IUPUI in Indiana. And obviously, a pretty crazy moment, and ended up, getting about 15 or 16 total offers, and no high major offers or anything like that, like regarding like Power 5 schools, but some Ivy Leagues and like Tulane and Loyola Chicago and Rice and stuff like that. And ended up committing to Rice University. And you want me to just go through the whole timeline, right? Or just
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
cool.
no, take your time. Take your time.
I was wondering, like, how long do you want the timeline to go here?
Yeah, go.
So committed to Rice.
Don't worry,
and,
Big Red. You'll have your turn.
Committed to Rice, and spent 2 years there. Played well for my second year, and decided to transfer out and transferred to UFC. Did 3 years there, and went on an Elite Eight run, and had a good time, and very successful for years, and then ended up going undrafted. Out of that, kind of changed my perspective as I went from being at Rice, where I was initially planning on not playing after school, and then obviously gradually got better, and went undrafted and signed with the Miami Heat Summer League. Played well there, then signed on a contract called an Exhibit 10 contract, which is basically the contract right outside of being on the roster, and you still did it cut out? And ended up after the preseason getting sent to the G League team for Miami, which is in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is a unique experience in itself. And I spent like 6 or 7 weeks there, and then was playing well and got called up to the Celtics and on a 2-way contract. And did you keep cutting out? Just keep cutting. Yeah,
bad Wi-Fi over there.
I'll try and change my Wi-Fi after that. But ended up playing the rest of the season with the Celtics, and even got in a few games. Went back and forth between the top team, their G League team, which is how a 2-way contract works. Get into more details if need be, but and we ended up winning a championship this year. So definitely been a crazy journey within a year. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Now re-signed and training again for the next season. So
That's awesome. All right, Big Red, it's your turn. You've
What a
been
ride. It's hard
super,
to follow. It's hard to follow that up.
well, you've been super patient. I think you can follow that up pretty good.
No, I mean, we're pretty similar. Met playing baseball. We both played baseball a lot growing up. I played football a little bit, like first few years when I was younger. And then baseball, soccer, basketball, played all those. Definitely was drawn most to soccer, I'd say, pretty much the whole time. Naturally, was just probably best at it out of all of them, but loved playing basketball. So I think me and Drew both stopped playing. Do you guys hear that noise? Maybe it's my computer. Sorry. We're first timers here with the pod. We'll cut us some slack. So played. I quit baseball and had to stop playing baseball. Narrow down. I think in maybe 8th grade did we stop playing, Drew? Around there, maybe even.
I thought early middle school maybe.
Yeah, and then we and played back. Basically, then was down to basketball and soccer, pretty much knew I was just going to focus on soccer. So I stopped playing AAU around that time, maybe 8th grade. So I was only playing basketball then in high school in the winter. Helped me a lot to focus on soccer, So, before we get into it, like I completely agree with playing multiple sports is a thing that I believe in also. Um, and it's not, I feel like, as popular with soccer to do that. I feel like, traditional like basketball, football, baseball, I feel like it's a bit easier to play multiple. I was really glad I got to play multiple sports. So, yeah, get to high school and basically just played basketball in the winters, played soccer. So I played soccer year round, obviously, and played at Libertyville High School. And started. I'm trying to think. I think my sophomore year. So my sophomore year, we won state with Libertyville High School, and kind of from there, I realized that could kind of take it somewhere, and started to get recruited around then. Played well on the club soccer scene and all that, and I was fortunate enough to have some get recruited by some good schools out of high school, and it was kind of always my dream. I grew up kind of a Notre Dame fan, kind of an Indiana fan, so I always wanted to eventually play at one of those. I was pretty interested, looking at Wisconsin as well, but ended up going with Indiana. Both my parents went there; they met there. So I joke around, I was almost brainwashed growing up to be an IU fan. So it was really a dream to play there, and I, looked up to it. I was at the national championship in 2012 when they won, and ever since then was kind of like I would love to play here. So yeah, I was fortunate enough to play one in high school, get recruited there, and yeah, ended up. It was a long road there, to be completely honest. A lot of ups and downs, as I'm sure we'll get into. But me and Drew, I think a cool part of our story is we both faced, for lack of a better word, a good amount of adversity throughout our journey, especially early on in college, and had to lean on each other a lot for that. But we'll get into that later. So then from there, played at Indiana. I was fortunate enough, played in 2 national championships, 3 Final Fours, lost both finals, unfortunately, but just crazy experiences. Won a bunch of Big Ten titles, regular season tournament. And my last season was had a pretty good year. And just like Drew also, I assumed I was probably just going to get a job after college, And fortunate enough, I got drafted by FC Dallas in the second round of the MLS draft. Went out there to Dallas. I was with them for a few months, and then unfortunately didn't work out, and then played a few more months in Denver in the USL, which is a separate league from the MLS, kind of like just a little bit below the MLS. And from there ended up going a different route with my life. I think I had to accept that it kind of ran its course, and of course, sometimes you wish things go different ways, but sports, it's timing, it's a lot fate, everything happens for a reason. So, yeah, no longer playing, of course, but it's an awesome journey. It was crazy. So, still super involved with sports, still play occasionally. So, it's been unreal.
Well, I think it's a really good background, and I had some stuff about the two of you in the future, but I think it just leads itself to talk about some of the challenges that both of you guys faced, because I think it's important for players, for parents, and I think even coaches of all levels to be able to get a realistic picture of that. It's not just roses and sunshine all the time, especially at these elite levels, because you guys have had some serious sacrifices that you've had to make. And I think it's Whit, I think you need to maybe expand on some of the adversity that you faced, and then uh, we'll chat with Drew about the similar in principle adversity, what you guys did to support each other.
For sure. Yeah, no. So once I kind of knew going in that it was going to be a little bit of a bumpy road just because, Indiana University, for people that aren't familiar with soccer, is kind of the mecca of college soccer.
Yep.
It's hard to play there. It's really hard to, obviously be on a team, but it's really hard to actually get time and play there. And I kind of knew that. And when I first got there, we had a really good team. I think like almost everyone in the starting 11 played professional soccer. So I knew, but, I was willing to throw myself into the fire, if you will, and yeah, basically when I got there, it was tough. I have to lean on family, friends when you're not playing, when you're just practicing. And I redshirted my freshman year, and then I actually got hurt in the beginning of my sophomore year, and then ended up not really playing at all my sophomore year as well. I played a little bit, but not really. And then, not until my my third season, did I really start to get decent time, and start putting up numbers and helping the team. And even then, it was still pretty up and down. My true senior year, I didn't have the greatest year, especially the first half of the year. And you're battling guys for this competition. You're battling for roster spots all the time. It's a lot of ups and downs, So it's helps to have an awesome family. With me, me and Drew are fortunate to have great families that are super supportive. Our dads especially always pushed us a lot, which I think helped a ton in our sports. And it's been a long ride. We've come a long way. I joke from playing pickup hoops and 1-on-1 in Drew's backyard.
So I mean, for you, Drew, what kinds I mean, was it similar adversity as far as like cracking through the lineup and playing time, or was it different?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't go to, obviously didn't go to his, biggest school as Witt to start, but, similar, I think, just being to college. I think the biggest jump, high school guys don't realize is like, well, I mean, you realize it, but you don't kind of get it until you're really in the mix. Is, you go from playing with your grade every year to, primarily outside of, when you make varsity as a sophomore or something like that. But to playing with guys who, are grown men, age 22 and 23 when you're an 18-year-old. And I think the biggest thing is I kind of thought, I deserved to be going to a bigger school right away, and ended up thinking, I'm going to come into Rice, school that, I initially thought like, I'm almost above, in kind of a bad way. And I thought I was going to come in and really, kill it and all this stuff. And then, kind of almost be on my way after a year and stuff like that. And I kind of saw it as a stepping stone. And, every kid wants to play at a big school and stuff like that. And I ended up coming in and, starting right away, and, I was feeling good because, I was one of the bigger recruits that had gone there. And, I ended up playing terrible. Freshman year is my, worst athletic career I've had. And I think, I shot, like 27% from three. And I ended up getting benched, about halfway through the year. And, at a certain point, I wasn't even checking into games. Like, I went from kind of the top of the world to where I thought I was going to, go to a big school, and, going to a point where I wasn't even checking into games at a mid-major school. And, it was really hard, especially because, Rice is a small school. It's not, in the Midwest, so not, like Big Ten country where everyone is. And I was the only person from my school that went there. And it was just a, really unique experience that obviously taught me a lot. And, so I knew I kind of had to, figure out some things in the off season. And, I think there's even points where I was like, do I even want to keep playing basketball? It's, it was obviously pretty crazy year overall, but I think that was definitely the biggest off season I've had in terms of I really gotta get my strength, lock in if I want to have the rest of my journey here. So it definitely taught me a lot of life lessons that year.
Well, what changed? I mean, because both you guys faced kind of similar similar challenges because, you know, yeah, it was playing time, but really it was this, to me, it was like a mindset and it was a choice. You know, you both mentioned, I didn't know if my career was going to be over. I mean, you know, um, what made you guys, you know, have the choice between sticking with it as opposed to hanging it up?
Yeah, I guess I can touch on that. Well, it's funny. I guess I never like it never really crossed my mind when I was going there. You know, I'm like, oh, I love the school. No matter, you know, you pick a school, no matter what, I'll love it, even if I'm, you know, never playing or anything like that. But then you actually get in there and it's really hard um, to not think about it. Like I'd be lying if I didn't say I didn't think occasionally about, you know, maybe transferring or, you know, testing it out. And, you know, it's testing for sure when you know, day after day, every single day you're practicing and you're not playing in the beginning.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just got to divine set and buy in. And yeah, I'm glad looking back that I really bought in at Indiana to it. But I'd be lying if I said I never thought about, you know, leaving and going somewhere else. And fortunately, it ended up all working out, and I never had to do that. And yeah, so on that end, but then professionally, obviously, I did end up hanging it up in a weird situation. Like Dallas was not on my terms, of course, but in Denver, that was on my terms, and kind of just realized my life was headed in a different direction, and that's the hardest thing of all time. You know, it's like I remember when I basically got, you know, released from Dallas. That flight home was so tough. You know, it's like your whole life. It's your dream. You know, you think back to, you know, the amount of hours me and Drew have put in, like just even growing up playing sports, be well the amount of hours me and you have worked out in your gym. And
Mhm.
it's like you think back to everything. It was such a long journey and it worked out, you know, it worked out. I wish, you know, my professional career lasted longer and worked out maybe in a different way. But it was a really unique feeling on that plane ride home of almost just like sadness, of course, you know, it's raw emotion of like, wow, you know, my dream may be ending or, you know, me being, you know, I might have to part ways with soccer here shortly when it's been the only thing I've ever known my entire life. But then on the flip side, you know, it's a ton of gratitude. I'm like, oh my God, I've had the best people in the world in my life, family, friends, people like you guys. And you know, it's like, what a journey. So yeah, I'm glad I stuck it out in college and I'm at peace with my decision professionally to hang it up. I never obviously thought about hanging up in college, you know, it's like, it was either play at IU or play somewhere else, you know, but
Mhm.
professionally it was tough to hang it up. But in college, I'm so happy I stuck it out, but it's tough. And I am glad too that we're in, feel like these days now in college, kids are so much quicker to jump ship. And I don't honestly blame them. I think it's situational. You know, people got to do what's best for them. But there is definitely less of a culture of buy in and, you know, kind of wait your turn. I even like, I'm impressed by this is super, you know, off topic, but like Archie Manning playing at Texas, you know, is one of the highest rated quarterbacks in the country, and he's sitting 2 years straight behind Quinn Ewers so he can play at Texas. And he did not transfer, and obviously he'll get rewarded and be the starter next year. So it's kind of, you know, I see both sides, but sometimes if you get stuck in a bad spot, you know, at the end of the day, the coach makes all the decisions. It's like you got to do what's best for you. So I totally respect and see both sides of the big transfer debate that's going on currently. But a little bit off topic, Drew can get into to his journey with leaving Rice and all that.
Well, I could
Yeah,
just,
I
if I
mean,
could make a comment on the one
yeah,
thing
go.
with that. I think the interesting thing about athletes in general, and especially like with having talked to Whit before, is I think there's always a double-edged sword with what goes on in like a mindset where you're almost never satisfied because you're always shifting the goalposts. Uh, every level you get, you're shifting the goalposts of what you think is good and what you think you've accomplished. Like if you told me in Witt in middle school, like you even got a college offer, it'd be like the most insane thing ever.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like if I could just get to college and play. But then every kind of level you get to, there's always like, oh, I kind of, it's like, oh, whatever, I want like this now, and I want, it's like the new big shiny thing, and so it's kind of, I always say like athletics is such a high paced thing where you never have time to really sit and reflect, and so it's just like a weird like double edged sword of like you should never be satisfied with what you're doing because you're always like striving for more, but you always kind of feel like you haven't accomplished enough in a way, because there's always kind of like that next thing you want. So I think it's a hard mentality to kind of deal with as like an athlete in general. So,
I mean, you guys, to me, it sounds like, what we talk about in our coaching group of like this over under, meaning it's this, overreaction or this like under reaction. Like for you, Drew, you got to Rice, you thought you were hot stuff. So you potentially were thinking, I don't really need to do much. I'm going to be in the starting lineup, and then holy crap, at the end of year one, you're not even getting called into games. So now you've got to like really make that shift. And to me, what's like the most interesting is um you know what in your head had you make that shift? Like, what was it for you?
I'd say that off season. I think it's almost like the being backed into a corner type fear,
Mhm.
and I'm sure like Witt's experienced before, just like you kind of feel like if you it's almost like a fight or flight where like you can either kind of like call it or you got to kind of just make any move possible to survive in a way, and I think that's why I was fortunate to go to a school like Rice at the beginning, which you don't see as a kid coming out of high school. You always are very, um, you want the biggest thing, and I remember vividly. I was wearing Stanford sweatshirts and Michigan sweatshirts because I thought I was going to get offers from them. I visited those schools, and I was really sad when that didn't happen. And I realized if I went to those type of schools like Northwestern or Stanford or something like that, and I had a bad freshman year, you could get buried for the rest of your career, and then eventually you have to transfer as a junior, or if you did a fifth year, a senior, or something like that, to a lower school, and the trajectory of your career kind of shifts in like the opposite direction. And so I think that's important even for younger kids, where it's like, especially the transfer portal nowadays. I always, even for like top 50 to 100 recruits, it's one thing if you're top 20, but going to a smaller school for a year can be beneficial because you'll play a lot, and then you can always like transfer up and even talking NIL, get a lot more money. Versus if you go to these bigger schools that get a ton of transfers every year, like Tennessee or something like that, there's no way you're playing as a freshman unless you're like really, 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 really ready to go, which is very rare. And so I think certain things happen for a reason. But back to what you were saying, just like I just realized it's kind of a you're either gonna kind of make things happen, and I think for the first time in my career, like I think me and you've talked before of like shifted mindset of how you approach your preparation, your off season, your lifting, everything with that. I think that was the first off season I really took it seriously. Just top to bottom for the first time, and I think it was just a result of like a bit of a fight or flight of you could either be buried here or and be done, or really turn it around. So that's my experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, what was interesting is, knowing you guys for as long as I have, right? I've been able to see development through you, both physically, but I would say more. I would say more emotionally, and I would say more mentally. And what was interesting to me, and it was very apparent to me, was that, uh, you know, that year for you, Drew, that freshman year, I didn't hear from you. Like there was a period of a year, year and a half where, you know, I didn't like we just kind of lost contact for a little bit. Um, and when I saw you again after that, so like quote unquote after the storm, I think one of the first things I said to you, and I even said it to you after like the first session of us together, was that the most impressive thing wasn't about the numbers, it wasn't about what you were lifting or how you were moving, but I could tell that you were taking your uh I, the total game, the total player totally differently. So exactly what you said, your mind shift was I'm gonna I'm gonna put everything I can into the gym. I'm gonna make sure I get, the proper sleep. I'm interested in these quote unquote intangibles. And what I can remember, um and I think in part was because you never really you were home a bit more often than Drew was, so I don't think, we ever like lost a period of time like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
agree.
yeah, but I really think that, there was something, and maybe it was the injuries. Like you had mentioned, you got injured your freshman year, and um, but I almost think like you drew the line and you said, "Look, I'm I'm putting I'm putting like everything into this," because I think
For
like
sure.
I think like these youth and high school kids, um, I, it's easy to do. Don't get me wrong. So I'm not saying that they're making you know this mistake. What I am saying is that they look at they look at guys like yourselves, at these very, very high levels. And like, we'll get into just how high the level in which you guys achieved is. Um, but they think it's all skill based. If I shoot so many free throws or 3-point shots, or, if I work on so many crosses or passes or dribbling or whatever it is. But I think what you guys are both saying is that there's more that made you successful than just the skill. There were other intangibles like your mindset, like strength and conditioning, like time management.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think me and Drew, it's funny, we used to call it, it's called the loft, but at Drew's house growing up, that's where we'd, hang out all the time and shoot the shit and, you know, play video games, yada, yada. But I think that actually helped us so much. And, we'd get, people would kind of give us a hard time sometime in high school or, not that we wouldn't have a good time and party and stuff, but, we really, this was our dream, and we would talk about it. I think having each other to lean on helped a ton in the sacrifice realm of like, hanging out all the time together and pushing each other and working out all the time together and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And I think both of us made like a conscious decision. Of course, it's a feedback loop, right? It's like in high school, you start to play well or like that age time. And, of course, it's not like a lot of it is natural talent.
yeah,
Um, like we're all, we were pretty blessed to be naturally talented in our sports and, you can't teach that, but I think we did a really good job of maximizing it. And it's so funny because it kind of went in waves, almost identical timelines for both of us of like, our junior, senior year of college, that's when, or of high school, we're both getting recruited. We're like on top of the world. And that's when it's really easy to buy in to the process. That was when, and we were though, we're buying in every single day, working out, doing stuff, basically committing, eat well, all the things that you can talk about. And then we both got to college. And it's funny because in hindsight, we talk about it, and obviously we both knew, but we didn't know how we were both kind of going through it that much at the same time of like different stuff. I wasn't playing at Indiana. Drew was at Rice, not playing as well as he should have been or wanted to. And then that's when shit gets hard. That's when it's like hard to buy into the sacrifice, and it almost gets, you hit a point where you're like, kind of, is it worth it? And I think me and Drew almost kind of waned. Drew can chime in, but we almost kind of waned on that line of like almost falling into the, it is what it is. And I think we both hit a point and made a conscious effort kind of around our, I don't know, sophomore year or junior year for me, maybe, or kind of that time frame of like, let's get back to what got us here and really dig our feet in the sand and get back in the process. And from then on, it was like full buy-in and, kind of from there. And that helped us obviously take on and through college and playing professionally in our sports. So Drew can chime in on that, but it's hard. It's easy when things are going well, and it's hard when it's not, but it is big. It's a big sacrifice. It's hard to get to the levels. I mean, Drew just won an NBA championship with the Celtics. Like that is, it's harder. The levels are harder than people think. Even like me, going to FC Dallas, there's levels to stuff, and you really got to sacrifice and max it out. So.
Yeah, I agree with what Witt is saying. I think the biggest thing to start briefly off what you started the comment with, Bewell, is obviously Witt talked about like natural gifts, and it's a blessing to be this tall, and for Witt to be that fast and stuff like that. I'm not saying there isn't inherent natural abilities that come with it, but I think it's like once you get over this threshold of wherever that line may be of like you have gifts like to play athletics, which I think is a larger number than most realize. Of like you see guys across both the MLS, NBA, NFL where there's small little slot receivers in the NFL that are no bigger than the average guy, and I think that a lot of things like that you said that people don't realize is like, I think what gets underrated is like, not to like toot our own horn, but like me and Whit were just like two regular guys from Libertyville who like didn't really do much in high school. Like regarding like, we put in work, like Whit said, probably past that junior years where we really started taking it seriously. But, in middle school and all this stuff, I remember like these vivid conversations that we'd have of like, oh, we're going to be like, not to reference, the negative side of it, but we'd always be watching, The Wolf of Wall Street and stuff like that. And we'd always be like, do we really want to be like that one day? We really want to like, not in like the bad ways, but we want to strive for success. And, really, we'd be, almost in a narcissistic way, be telling people like, hey, we're going to be great. We're going to do all these things. And I do think it comes with the mindset of like, you have to kind of tell yourself certain things to get yourself in the mindset of like what you're going to kind of talk yourself into doing. I know that's a big thing psychologically nowadays where people say you should be manifesting and telling yourself things to get yourself to like, be put in a mindset of doing certain things like that. And so like I can't speak of just like we were just like two regular guys who decided to just like start putting a little more time into our sports every now and then. And once again, I am very tall, but I was 168 pounds coming into college, which is 40 pounds lighter than anyone my height was. So there's certain there's pros and cons to everything, but anyone, if you just, and I think Wick can attest to this at his level too, but I always get surprised where like I thought it does seem like a big daunting task of getting to the higher levels of sports, but it really is just small steps. Because like even like you watch all these movies and you see all these things from like Kobe and stuff like that of like I was in the gym 5 a.m. then 11 a.m. 3 p.m. all that kind of stuff, 4 times a day. And, I think there is even like a good portion of people who, I'm always surprised by, like, they're not even doing too much outside of just like regular practice, even at every level, not just like high school and so I think what's good that me and Witt have always had is that we've talked about is like I've always kind of had a little bit of like, if I'm not doing something, I always feel like other people are probably doing more than me. And as I've kind of looked back, I don't think that's a reality. I think everyone's kind of got that mindset. And I think there are a few guys on, each team and different levels that like really put in extensive work and stuff like that. But my whole point is like, it's very reasonable for like the amount of work you could be doing just to like outwork the other guys, whether that be just like an hour a day extra or like 45 minutes a day or like one more lift a week or like one more shooting session a week, So I think that it's very attainable if you just kind of make really small steps. And I even tell the younger guys, especially like when you're in like middle school or something, you don't have to be, hey, I'm going to go get an extra 90 minutes in the gym to get better. It's like, just do like one more dribbling drill a day as you're younger to kind of approach like starting to build a big foundation to like where you can like make these strides, and eventually it'll show on the field or the court or stuff like that. But I forgot what Witt was saying that I was going to go off of, but to your original question, that was
I have a quick tidbit on top of that. I think it helps so much to like just learn to love it. If you love it, it's so much easier. Like I'm trying to think of examples almost like there's nothing better. Like I enjoyed nothing more growing up than, getting a workout in on my own, kicking a ball against the wall. And obviously there's, shooting hoops. Like the amount of times I've guarded Drew in his driveway one-on-one, even recently, like when we were home, sometimes me telling him to get in a net and shooting balls at him at the high school field and like find a way. I used to hop the fence at Brainerd Field in Libertyville literally anytime I could. Every single weekend I was there shooting balls, dribbling, just working on your craft. Like once you start, like I said, it's a feedback loop. Once you start to love it, you get out there, you're doing stuff, you start getting better, you start seeing better results, blah, blah. It gets you almost become addicted to the feedback loop of like, I want to be great at this and I'm going to max it out and just do the best I can. And like, we were always doing stuff like that. Like you didn't even have to, you shouldn't have to be told to like put in the extra reps or put in, do stuff on your own. Like you should just want to on your own. And if you struggle to do it on your own, like Drew said, just start with little, steps and the feedback loop gets going. Like momentum is a really, really powerful thing, especially in sports and personal development and all that. Like just get the ball rolling and, small action's better than no action. It compounds at a crazy clip, like if you're doing something every day, not, every day or all the time, like in a year, that's an insane amount of hours. Like just put in the work and start to love it. I'd say helps a ton. It makes it so much easier. Like if you just love it, because then it's not even always about the outcome. Like it's process oriented is always the way to do it. Build systems, like it's not, I'm definitely, a proponent. It's systems, not always goals. Goals help, but like the systems get you there. Like it's your habits, all that. That's what gets you there.
Yeah, and to say one more thing off that, I can't say it enough. It's not like we're telling you, hey, you can't go out on weekends. You can't do, like, you have to be so, like, especially at a young age, you have to be so regimented. But, like, the difference is, like, when people are working out 4 or 5 days a week, me and Witt would still be going to, our friends, whatever, parties on Friday and Saturday in high school.
Yeah,
but we'd be working out that Sunday morning at 10 a.m. So it's like, I think Kobe had a good quote of saying, like, you could go to the club, but you better be in the gym at 6 a.m. with me the next day. So it's like, as long as you take care of your stuff, feel free, it's like the work hard, play hard, quote. It's just like, take care of your stuff and then you could, have your fun, but just take care of your business. And then you should not feel paranoid or bad about, spending extra time with your friends and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting that you guys are saying is that, you both brought up genetics in in a way. In other words, whether you want to call it, you were blessed with certain things. Yet what I'm hearing out of both of you is that you got to a point where it became this love of process, this love of what you're doing, and you guys put in an immense amount of work, especially when other people were, let's say, um, taking the day off. There was like certain non-negotiables. So whether it's that 10 a.m. on Sunday, no matter what you did on Friday, Saturday, that was work. But really, like, was it work? Because quite frankly, you guys were loving doing it. Whether it was loving getting together as buddies, or whether it was love of developing, your craft of whatever sport.
For sure. I couldn't agree more.
I mean, I went, the prep school that I went to back in Boston, in my time there.
Back in your prime, baby.
Back in my prime. In my time there, our hockey team was incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible. And I was like middle of the road as far as talent goes. I think the majority of our first two lines, both forwards and defense, all got full ride Division I scholarships to like big schools, like BC, BU, Dartmouth. I mean, like big hockey schools. And but there were six over the course of my tenure there at that prep school that got drafted in the NHL. And of those six guys, I use this, and I think I've said this to both of you before, but I think it's worth saying here, so more people can hear it. In my opinion, and of course, if he ever hears this, I'm sure he'll give me a ton of crap, but in my opinion, the least talented, like skill talent, God gift talent, right, that we're just kind of using this terminology, was the only one that actually made it to an actual NHL team and won a Stanley Cup with them. So, like, for me, and this is, this can kind of lead to like another segue, but I think at each level, right? So like, whether it's high school, whether it's college, whether it's pros, everybody's talented. I mean, like everybody on the Celtics right now that is out on the court with you, Drew, they're all talented. Like, I don't think that's what is in question. Everybody that played soccer with, like you said, they were all pro. The starting 11 were all pro. Like, talent is out of it. So, like, for me...
Yeah, it's the margins get so fine,
Yes.
Higher level. Like, I'm sure,
return.
Yeah, I'm sure Drew could touch, like, the most of the Celtics. Like, that's like the best basketball players in the world. Like, it gets to a point where it's such fine lines. It's crazy.
Okay, so here's my question, right? At every level, whether IU with those 11 guys, whether now at the Celtics, right? I mean, you just won a national championship, for crying out loud, right? What is separating guys from the next guy? Like, what separates one guy from the other guy? what allowed you to crack that lineup at IU? What is allowing you, Drew, to keep at that high level, giving yourself every chance to get in the game?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me, I always say is, as I've gotten the experience and been around every level to this point, and the biggest thing, like I talked about, is like within the margins. Like I always say, like the diminishing marginal returns is a big thing I look at. Where like the difference between like high school and college is there's a wide margin of the talent and what you got to do to get minutes. But as you progress, the margins continue to get smaller
Yes.
at every level. And that's why I think, especially when I went from Rice to USC, I think it was the first time I experienced that small margin gap where when I got there, I thought my plan was actually to, sit out a year because I wanted to, just get better and like be ready for the next season. But I got there and I thought like, I'm as good, if not better than most of these guys. And I thought like going from mid-major to high major, there's going to be like, all these big recruits and all that stuff. And I thought, I was going to be kind of put behind the curve. But I think that the talent gap, as you continue to progress, gets smaller and smaller. And I think the biggest thing is you just got to be prepared for the opportunities you're going to get, because everything is opportunity and situationally based. Like I always say, I think there's a ton of guys who are not in the NBA right now who happen to get the short end of the stick in regards to opportunities or situational things. And I think vice versa, there's a ton of guys who are in the NBA who have gotten the right things. And I don't necessarily think they're talented enough to be in the NBA. I think there's a big group of people that are eligible for these spots that you have. And I think, what Mark Cuban always says, it's like a ton of luck got him to where he is right prepared and working hard on all that stuff. There's a lot of luck with a lot of situations like this. So the biggest thing you can do is whenever you get that opportunity, like for example, I think the biggest thing is like in the NFL, there's always that sometimes like that Alex Smith who goes down and Kaepernick comes in, and then you make a name for yourself right there. Of like when a guy were to go down or sick or something's wrong, you guys aren't playing well, you're on a bad team, and the coach wants to change things up. You have to be prepared. And not saying like the pressure has to be too extreme for a situation like that, but all the work you put in is so you're ready for that one situation where you're able to prove like, I can play at this level. And just referencing, like pro levels and stuff like that, like there's like a ton of guys like where the gap is like 1 or 2 makes per game of like this guy's like got this small margin better at shooting, this small margin at passing. And so like the biggest thing is like, all these guys top to bottom outside of, there's the outlier top 15 to 20 guys in the NBA who just like are noticeably better than everybody. From rosters like, 6 to 7 to the end of the bench, everyone is in basically the same group. It's just like you do a tiny thing better than the coach likes, and all of a sudden you're making $10 million more a year than the guy who's 15th on the team. It's a pretty unique situation with that, but I can't emphasize enough how much opportunity and just situational stuff plays into it. And like we were talking about transferring earlier, and that's why like it's always so hard to know if you should transfer or not, because you don't know if like you kind of got screwed the previous year and you're going to get a better opportunity this year. The coaches are telling you something like, hey, we have an opportunity, or you could leave and get a new situation, but this staff doesn't know you, so you don't know if you're going to get that kind of like familiarity thing. And it's very tedious to deal with, but the situational analysis and just like the only thing you can really do as a person is kind of be ready for your opportunity at any given time. I know it's cliche, but there's a lot of luck that comes with a lot of this stuff. So, and I'm sure Wick can touch on all that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a ton of luck. I think, the only thing you can do honestly is just because there's a lot of things you can't control. You just increase your surface area for luck almost by having good habits and doing all that. I unfortunately think it was tough timing for me professionally in the situation that I was in. And to like Drew's point, it's like you can't control that stuff. It's like you can just put in the work on your end and see where it takes you. But a lot of it is situational timing and all that. that's life in general, but sports especially, it's once you get in the higher, get higher levels, that's the big part of it. So all you can do is your end. Yeah. Increase your, surface area of luck by being ready, working on your own stuff.
In all the years that I've known you, Whit, that right there may be the most wise thing that you've ever
I feel like a philosopher right now.
that you've ever said. Increase the surface area of luck. That's awesome. I think that
throw that on a shirt, be well. Throw that on a shirt.
Hey, that's not a bad idea, buddy.
I'll be going as Aristotle. I'll be going by Aristotle from now on.
That's a good. Throw that on a shirt. That's a good one.
That's a good one. I love it. Okay, so Drew, you alluded to in your answer to the coach sees something, and they give you the opportunity. Like that's what was the shift. But I just want to shift to coaches for a second. For each of you, who I should say who, and you can name a couple if you wanted to. It doesn't necessarily have to be just one, but who in the course of your careers has been the most impactful coach for you, and why?
Drew, you can take it first.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a blend of different people along the way. Obviously, I think the first person that kind of is Whittle helped me quit other sports and focus on basketball was Jonathan Malatz. You know him pretty well. He helped me with kind of focusing on basketball and brought me into AU and stuff like that. And me and Whit are actually still close to him to this day. And, he's kind of been there all along the way with.
That's our guy.
Yeah, and advisement as the elder he is. But he's a big part. Chris Pickens, which be well, is another guy I was training with for a lot of my life, and so he's a guy that I spent countless hours in the gym with and stuff like that, and then through college, my head coach at Rice was great. He's a person I learned a ton with. Where, like I say, like my freshman year was definitely one of the hardest years of my life, and he helped me a ton with kind of getting through that and what there needs to be, and to get kind of progress and get to that next stage. And then one of the assistants at USC, Chris Capco, Whit knows as well. And he helped me a ton with just all the stuff at USC. I think that it's very interesting to see kind of where you almost kind of follow to at certain points of your life of what kind of things you need from different people to kind of keep going, just depending on what's going on situationally in your own life. So, I think what's interesting is just like all these coaches can. It's weird to think of, not to get too Aristotle wit on everybody. I'm not as good as
rubbing off on people,
but it's almost like you always see coaches like kind of like a different level, but like they are just like people who kind of help, and as we kind of get older, we can see like how we can help younger people and tell them our pathways and how they can do better. But all these people you appreciate down the road of like that have helped kind of support you and encourage you and lead you along the right path to success. So that's just a few of mine. But
yeah, for sure. I have one that comes to mind particularly. Robert Meschbach was my youth coach at a really like kind of pivotal time in my soccer journey, I guess you'd call it. He actually played at Indiana, played professionally, legend of soccer. And he helped me a ton just to kind of like push me, of course, but like just learning, like just surrounding yourself with, like, being able to be around really good coaches, people that have done it before, people that are, have been there. And so he helped me a ton. Always had my back. It goes a long way. It's kind of crazy. It's almost like of course, like, if nobody believes in you, at least you have to be believing in yourself. But it goes a long way to have somebody that has, like, like, shakable, like, rock faith in you and belief in and all that. That's a coach. Of course, your family, if you're fortunate enough, your family, friends, all that have that. But have a coach kind of go to bat for you and kind of take you under his wing. That's kind of what happened with me, and that helped a ton. Helped me kind of realize that that's what I want to do and to push for it. So Robert Meschbach, that's my guy. Of course, shout out to Thunholm as well. Our guy, me and B-Well's guy. High school soccer coach at Louisville. He's a man, and Bitta as well, who was a coach when we won my sophomore year. Just great coaches. I think it helps a ton. That's almost like luck too. You can't even control who you end up getting around, but meticulously, iterating to get to be around the best people. You are who you surround yourself with and who you talk to and all that. So that's the way to go. And of course, you've been.
Yeah,
of course.
Goes without being said, obviously, with B-Well.
We grew up going to you. Like, that helps a ton. It's so different. Like, your gym it's like a family. It's like home. It's not just working out. Like, we're always clowning around and all that, but when the time comes, we'll get our work done. And I sometimes needed help along the way. And you definitely helped shift my mindset of, like, can't always joke around. Sometimes I almost swayed too far in that end. And so but it is like, I love being around both of you, like, while we're doing our stuff, or when we used to, and even outside of that, just messing around. So it's all the people, just be around great people. And obviously that's coaches as well. And flip side tidbit also, coaches is kind of it's an interesting thing because, once you get to, higher levels also, it's like coaches have to decide who's playing, and they actually hold, like, all the power. So it's like, it's a very interesting concept I've always thought about, in sports in general. Like, coach makes the decisions. Like, if you can do everything you can, and sometimes you can't even control stuff. I battled not playing for a decent amount at Indiana when I got there, stuff like that. So it's an interesting topic with that on that end. So
I think what is consistent in what you guys both said, and I think it's important for coaches out there to hear, is that you have two athletes here who have gone through virtually every rank in their respective sport, who are saying, when asked the question of who have been their most impactful coaches and why, not one time did either one of you talk about skill development. Not one time did you guys talk about, like, the best dribbling or free throw shots or 3 points or anything regarding your sport. What you guys brought up was, overall, if I had to sum it up, was care. You had coaches that cared about you, that wanted that development for you, not just as players, but as young men, because that I believe is what makes a coach successful, in my opinion.
yeah, 100%. I think it's all people, people. It's also, at the, like, professional sports it's a business, also. So then the dynamics get different. But having a youth coach that's awesome is really, like, priceless almost.
Yeah.
That kind of shapes who you are, shapes your mindset on where you want to go, and they can kind of open your eyes to what routes are and what's possible. So.
All right, so along that same topic, because you guys both brought it up at one point earlier, you guys talked about your dads. And in some way, our dads, because mine for sure, I can speak for me, was a huge impact on my life, well, still is. And, one of the things that you guys both said was you used the term, push, right? Your dad's pushed you. Um, so much of what we see now in youth athletics is this like, um, the parents living vicariously through their kids, that they're pushing their kids because they almost want the success for themselves, not for the kids, if that makes sense. um, they they're pushing their kids because they're they're wanting them to get a scholarship, right? Not because they're looking for their own kids' development, but because it's a means to an end. So I guess what I would like for you guys to discuss is like what made your dad's push successful? What made your dad's push be, um, let's say, positive as opposed to, like, oh, in other words, what made the push be a want to instead of a have to? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can go real quick because I just have a thought on that. I think in sports, especially, like it's so important to that just goes back to loving it, like wanting to versus being forced to. Like the kid that loves to do it on his own, regardless, will always like, and it's consistent, persistent, never stops, never stops. And this is in life too. I feel like almost in like any area of like your career or expertise, like the guy who truly loves it and it feels like play almost for him, and it will always beat out in the long run uh, somebody who doesn't love it and it feels forced and you're kind of fighting against the grain, and it's always just an uphill battle. So yeah, just I think it's on your own. Obviously, like our dads pushed us, but it's like you have to like on your own learn to love it, so that it's natural. You're not fighting against the grain.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to hear what Witz thinks about like what you said at the beginning. But it's interesting. I feel like almost the fulfillment from my parents has always been more than me, uh, because like I think you mentioned like just like what they get from it, but I think there could be some ways that like you make it in certain situations out of like not as well off areas and for scholarships and stuff like that. But I feel like the intention from my parents, especially my dad, has always been to set us up for the best life, for ourselves. Like where I think, and it's something I've started to realize, like, and obviously with Wit and what he can say on this, but just the stuff I've learned, like with how important, athletics has been to us in our development. I never realized as a kid, and like you start to kind of realize as you get older, and just like the intangibles you learn, and kind of like we did get scholarships. We went to great schools. We got great degrees. We have the professional experience, and I think it's something where like they always had like kind of this vision for our path from the beginning, and like the beginning it was like all fun and games to us, and like obviously there were days where you go home, and I'm sure Witt's had a ton of these too, where you leave a game playing terrible, and you go home and your dad's screaming at you in the car, and everything seems terrible, but it's all building this foundation of like getting to the point where we got to, and not fully realizing the vision they had. I don't think it's necessarily like a selfish vision from our parents, but it's more like they're setting us up. They're trying to explain like how important this is that you set yourself up for life in as good a possible way. And so that's why I feel like it's almost like I don't know. I mean, we don't have kids yet, me and Whit, but it's almost like, you're watching like a plant grow, like that you've been like, tending to. It's almost like I see it as like a video game. You're watching like something grow that you've been tending to since they were obviously like, 1 year old and stuff like that. And so I feel like I've always almost thought that like it almost matters even more, especially like my mom, even more than to her than myself, of like, the achievements and accolades and all that stuff. And so I think it's like it's definitely it's been interesting to kind of reflect on that, but it's pretty cool to be able to share those ideas, and I'm sure Whit has similar experiences with his parents. So
Yeah, no, hit it on the head. I completely agree. It helps so much to have supportive people around you, especially your parents. I think the most it helps the most when, like I said, when things are bad, but even just in general, it helps so much to have somebody like, when you're off in college, like to have your parents kind of just, they almost become like, they're obviously your parents, but they almost become kind of your best friends in a sense, in terms of like every day having someone to, if you ever need to talk to, get stuff off your chest, someone to talk about your journey with, every day, how was practice today? How was that? Yada, yada. It helps way more than I think people realize, to have someone to consistently talk to every day, as it, your parents, to have your parents to talk to always kind of keep in the loop, and it just keeps you on track. And yeah, and also to Drew's point, really quick, it helps a lot to have, it's not like doing anything, like it's not like you're like being a hero by any sense, but it's just sports, but it helps a lot to have like I don't even know how to word it, like almost like you're like, for all the hours that people have put into you, to like it's almost like your responsibility to maximize that, and kind of show not show but like, everyone puts in so many hours, and it's almost like your responsibility to maximize that and work the hardest you can to do well, kind of to sum all that up, basically, so.
agreed.
Do you guys, because I know I've run into this just in my athletic career, because you both kind of, and Drew, you kind of you dipped into a different level of sincerity when you mentioned your mom, and I think Whit, you did the same thing too. Uh, there's a uh, there's a sense of, I don't want to let people down. Did you ever feel like you were ever going to let your parents down?
Whit?
It's interesting. No, I don't think so. That they're your parents. Like, that's like a different type of unconditional love, no matter what. I think as long as you, do your best, as cliche as that sounds, but it's true. Like, if you do the best you can, like, there's nothing to be disappointed about. Like,
Mhm.
I am personally disappointed, not disappointed, I'm at peace with everything, but that how things went with me, professionally and stuff like that. But it's never crossed my mind that like anyone, my family, friends, people that truly love me would ever be disappointed now.
Well, I feel like, and Whit, tell me if I'm wrong here. I don't think it's more like or be well, maybe if the phrasing, I interpret it different. It's not like a disappointed in any regard of any steps of the way. It's more of like a extra motivation to not let them down, and like kind of like what you're saying, Whit, like you're kind of all in this together.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
I like that.
yeah, I mean, I feel like there's always been an extra motivation with like Whit said, like, like how many hours do they put in, like, driving me to practice and paying for all my training growing up and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
It's an
so
appreciation.
I do feel like it's more than just a cool as I can say. It's more than just like a focus on myself. It's more of like a group effort in that way. But I mean, I don't think there's any ever any like disappointment. It's more like, you know, there's steps along the way, and to everyone's career. I mean, but what we get out of it, I think, is like a group effort in that regard, even more so than just ourselves. So.
If I had your parents on the podcast, right, and I asked them, what do you think would be the moment in which they were the most proud of the two of you throughout your careers? Do you think it would be an NBA championship, or do you think it would be back in, 10th grade, or back in, your freshman year? Do you think it would be, IU related, or do you think it would be something else? What would you speculate your parents would be the most proud of you guys for?
That's a good question. I would say, like, this isn't like a specific moment, just in general. Like, always, I would go to the park across the street and, ask one of my parents to come kick a ball with me, all the time. And some of my like most fond memories, out with my mom or out with my dad or both of them sometimes, stuff like that. So I think, honestly, even that, like, there's super cool accolades, getting drafted, signing professional contracts, I don't know, first team, whatever in your conference, first team All Big Ten for me, first team Pac for Drew. And stuff like that is super cool. But I think for proud, I'd say all the hours we spent together. I think just the concept of me maybe wanting to do that with them, or just wanting in general to always work on the craft.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's not as much maybe a single athlete, but a big thing for me, I think, was when I was in Sioux Falls for the G League with Miami, and I was playing well, and they kind of asked me, like, oh, do you have any update on, like, with your agent of, like, how things are going with maybe getting an offer for, like, a two-way stuff or anything, and I basically told them, like, I'm not really worried about that, like, because, like, there's too many times I've had where, I kind of focus on that, like, with Stanford and Michigan offers and stuff like that, and I kind of, predetermined my mindset of, like, already jumping into conclusions with that. So I kind of told him, like, oh, I'm not, I don't want to discuss that. I'm just going to keep playing well, and hopefully it'll eventually come. And came like a week or two later, which I was really excited about. But I think, just a shift in mindset. I think there's, like, I assume with Witt too, there's, points of, like, kind of shifts in mindsets maybe your parents kind of see throughout your journey. So that's mine.
Well, I think it's awesome because both of what you guys are talking about is, just growth as humans. It's not even as basketball players or soccer players. It's, you guys growing up and maturing as young men. And I think both players and parents need to hear that message that, again, it's similar to coaching, that you've got to have this care for your kid, but it's more about their overall development than what accolades they're going to achieve because of said choices.
For sure. Yeah.
All right, so a little bit of a shift, couple more things, and we'll let you guys get on your way here. But there's a textbook out that I have been going through, and it's called Long-Term Athletic Development. It was written by a conglomerate of three people, but they have been around the athletic scene for decades, and they've put into their, let's say, development stages as this systematic and progressive development of individual athletes. And I think if you both saw the various stages, I think you would probably agree on all of those stages and the definitions. So that's not really what I'm talking about. What I want and what I'm most interested in is the one of the things that they define as their major challenge in executing these various stages for just kids in general, but growing into adults, is this us versus them mentality. And I know you guys have faced it yourself, because you both have mentioned AAU, you've both mentioned club teams, you've both mentioned high school teams, different coaches, different organizations. Um, because at the end of the day, right, this us versus them is not going to help uplift um, the overall system of development. So, what suggestions? All that being said, what suggestions do you guys have for athletes, coaches, parents, organizations, schools, even, right, that would help bring people together rather than cause this big divide?
What?
I was about to say Drew. I think Drew.
Wait, can you define can you define the us versus them for us?
I think Drew. I saw Drew's face scrunch up when you said textbook. I don't think he's touched a book since freshman year of high school.
You know the athlete lifestyle.
Here,
so can you define us versus them for Drew?
Yeah. Only for Drew, not for you. Only for Drew. So what I mean is an AAU team, right? A coach or even leaders of that organization will say, "Oh, you should follow us and what we have to do, because high school ball is junk. You're not going to get anything from high school ball." And then high school programs will be like, "Look, AAU thinks they're hot crap, and that they get to make all these decisions for you. What are we, chopped liver? Like you think we're like we have the intentions of these AAU clubs? We're like pure at heart. We just want such and such for you." So everybody's looking to like say they're either better or not a threat to you. But like how do we bring people together, basically?
What?
It's an interesting. Huh?
Whit, are you fully ready for a response, or can I clarify one more thing?
You can clarify one more thing.
Well, when you say like bring people together, like, are you talking about, like, I interpret your question as like, how do you kind of see through the weeds of like which program or which route to take, or is there like going a different direction? How Whit's seeing the question, but.
So I would say, sure, you could answer it that way, okay? But I would also say, like, how can AAU support someone that's also doing high school athletics, and vice versa? How can high school support that because
at
the end of
that's tough. It's hard.
It is tough.
Those are
very tough.
It's in because it's different stuff. Like certain like soccer, some guys don't play high school and just play for an academy. So it's hard because it's two sides want different stuff. So it's tough with that. Now, I do think that like people can get along better. Like, for example, like club stuff with high school for different sports, AAU, high school, yada yada. But it's a tough like tightrope, because the high school coach is always going to vie to not have kids not playing high school, whereas like club people always want playing for them. So that's tough. That's above my pay grade. That question is above my pay grade. Not above Drew's though. Let's see what he's got for us.
Well, I mean, it depends on the situation, of course. Like Whit said, there are some. That's why I interpret it that way. There are some like you have to pick between like high school soccer or club soccer. So like, there's not really like a coming together of the two. But in certain situations, I think like where like AAU for example is different than the high school season for basketball at least. I think there can be like a working together of the with like coaches coming together like the same goal. The same goal is obviously to get kids to college and like playing well for the high school teams or club teams, but the same goals for progression for the student athlete. It's hard because from your perspective, Be Well, if we could make this more of a conversation.
Sure.
Is it because you see a lot, like, do you hear from kids nowadays, like a lot of like, oh, he won't let me do this guy's telling me this, or like what is like kind of the purpose of like where you're trying to go with the question?
I've seen it from the very start. So I mean, in my first year at Libertyville in 2014 or 2015, I mean, I could see the divide, even like with basketball or baseball, right? So, it all was ego based. So who's going to get credit?
Right.
Is the AAU program or the club program going to get credit for your success, or is it the high school program that's going to get credit for your success? Are you going to, choose one over the other? And, I think ultimately, and I've seen it happen with other kids, is that because of the ego of the organization or the coach or whatever that may, the player actually, the kid winds up, unfortunately, taking the brunt of the situation. They wind up being hurt, not physically, but in their long-term athletic development.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I hate to throw this on Whit, but I think Whit, obviously, with having to pick between two things, I never had to pick AAU or high school basketball.
That's
so I
fair.
Whit could speak on this a little better than I can, but just in general, I think with decision-making, I think, the same thing goes with recruiting in college. Like, you got all these coaches telling you this situation will be the best, this will be the best, this, all that stuff. So, at the end of the day, having a good support group is crucial for that. But, I'll let Whit talk about the specifics of, like, high school and with that
Yeah,
stuff.
I think it's super simple. That's all that matters, your support. You need to have, like, yourself, like your own internal compass, but the people around you, because a bunch of people are going to tell you a bunch of different stuff. So you got to do what's best for you at the end of the day. And it's not always easy, especially I think with soccer, because there's different routes you can take. You can play academy and not play high school. You can play high school soccer and then play club in the, outside of that. It's a tough decision. I would just say do what's best for you. I personally loved playing high school soccer, and I'm fortunate I was able to do that. And I maybe would have switched if I was struggling to get recruited by schools that I wanted. The ones, like Indiana, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, stuff like that, like big schools like that. It's for soccer specifically, it's harder to get recruited playing high school. I will say that. I do think it gets too much disrespect of like the players. High school soccer still produces a lot of players, especially in Illinois. But academies also obviously produce great players. So it's a mix. You kind of just got to do what's best for you. and kind of go from there. It's so situationally based, I feel like. But I think doing what's best for you and not what other people like want you to do or letting that sway your decision is very important. So in my case, obviously I played high school and was fortunate to play high school all the way through. There's nothing better. Like I was thinking the other day, even like growing up playing sports in high school, like you're with all your best friends in front of your family, your whole school. Like there's nothing more fun than that. And I feel fortunate that I was able to experience that with soccer, Drew with basketball. Like some of them, like playing basketball together, me and Drew was like so much fun. Like showing up to a game in a gym with, big time coaches. Like you got Beeline in your gym coming to watch Drew, and me and him are just, playing basketball together. It's it's unreal,
Okay, so uh, two last questions, and they'll be like kind of rapid fire here, right? So, um, what excites you about sports right now? What are you? Is there anything in sports that say has you that you would like to see shifting? Right. So those two questions. So what excites you about sports right now, and what would you like to see shifted in sports?
I can go first because mine will be shorter, obviously, because I don't have the personal like current stuff anymore because I don't play soccer anymore. But first of all, the Bears playing in 10 minutes. That excites me. Caleb Williams era is upon us. Just in general, I nowadays obviously switching from like playing spectating sports a good amount now. There's nothing better than like what excites me is just seeing someone that like seeing their passion, as cliche as that sounds, and just like dominant athletes. Like I even nowadays I watch tennis all the time. Um, and the US Open finals today, actually. So I'm pumped to watch that. But I just love, I just love like individual brilliance, like just seeing hard work and talent mesh together is the coolest thing ever. Like Sinner in tennis, I watch him all the time. Like he's just unbelievably talented. There's like, it's so funny. I don't even know what I would do without sports, and I don't even play sports anymore. Like it's such a big part of my life, even as I've transitioned away from playing it. Just watching it's the best thing ever. And also sports, it's like, yeah, it's just the best thing ever. I don't even know how else to play it. And as for things shifting, I don't know. I think things just naturally kind of happen and shift in different sports in a good way. I love where sports are at. Sports are at now. And, soccer's been cool to see. The MLS been growing a lot, getting a lot better. It's so funny. It's like a double-edged sword. Like if I would have came out of college 5-10 years ago, my pro career would have been way different. And the MLS is much better now, way more competitive, all that. But then on the flip side, now it's also so much more fun to watch and enjoy. And I got a bunch of boys. Um, actually, my answer, most excited about sports, having a bunch of friends that still play professional sports, whether that's Drew with the Celtics, some baseball guys that we know. A lot of my buddies from college are still playing professionally. And obviously my teammates professionally as well, and teammates from IU. So getting to watch all my boys is amazing. It's pretty nostalgic when I'm, watching some of my best friends play sports. Makes me miss it, but obviously I'm unconditionally happy for them and all their success. And my favorite, of course, obviously, watching Drew's games, going to games. Got to see him play in Wisconsin recently, and then I was with him for the Celtics Eastern Conference against the Pacers, sleeping on his couch. So it's just there's so much good that comes from sports and the relationships, and just getting to watch all my boys play. It's almost makes me tear up. It's my guys.
I told Drew that the only way I'm watching basketball is if he's playing. So,
Yeah.
all right, man. So we'll wrap it up with you. So, what excites you about sports, and what would you like to see shifted?
Excites me. I think Whit put it great. I think just the community. I think it's awesome that I think I imagine with Whit too. We've gotten so many good connections from this. I think that sports is so important where it does develop a mindset and intangibles that you kind of need just to grow and you use throughout your whole life of decision making and hard work and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that sports has brought a ton of great connections as a whole. So I think that just the community part of it is like people and friends I've made to this day and all that kind of stuff. So, obviously, with being the top of that list, and be well, of course. But where sports are going, I think it's great. I think sports obviously becomes bigger every year, and I think the biggest thing I like about it is just like Twitter. And I don't know if you're a Twitter guy, be well, but just the community aspect of when games are going on and watching, especially the NFL starts today and stuff like that. So I don't necessarily know how much, what kind of shifts in general, sport to sport, but with how much bigger everything's becoming and even for example, Taylor Swift bringing another community to the NFLs. It's really cool to see and just having.
Rumor on the street is you're a big Swiftie.
I do like Taylor Swift. I wouldn't call myself a Swiftie, but I think she's pretty hot stuff.
Yeah, but in general, just the community aspect's the biggest part for sure.
All right. Well, fellas, I appreciate your time. We're certainly over an hour and a half now into this. I know you got the Bears to watch, and Drew, you've got plenty of other.
He's got to get his ass in the gym.
He's got some work to do. But fellas, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your candid insights into the players' side of things, because in our previous podcast we had on a coach and also really two coaches, but one of those coaches was also on the medical side of things as a physical therapist, a doctor of physical therapy. So the perspective of two athletes, especially and uniquely two best friends growing up in the same community, is really quite the unique situation. So I appreciate your guys' time and appreciate you being on.
Appreciate
it.
An honor.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. That was great.
You bet. All right.
Oh yeah.